Welcome to the show, Make It Plain, the Eric, Key, and Cameron Show. On today's show, we will address premillennialism. We encourage you to stay tuned and study with us. Thank you for tuning in to the show, Make It Plain, the Eric, Key, and Cameron Show. This podcast is dedicated to addressing various topics from a biblical perspective, coupled with practical solutions for daily application. In essence, we want to take the Bible, which is relevant for all that we need in this life and the one to come, 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3, and we just want to make it plain. Our contact information is you can email us at makeitplain, HAB22 @gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Submit questions, comments. Let us know how the show is going. Let us know if you'd like us to address any biblical topics. We love to possibly do that for you and drive show content. On today's show, we will discuss premillennialism. This is a great topic that I personally love studying, personally love teaching. It's just an interesting discussion to have with people because this topic actually permeates most all denominational. Yeah. Like all of denominationalism and the various tenets and foundational doctrines and theological thoughts. Like this topic tends to permeate all of them, and obviously there are hints of Calvinism and things like that in premillennialism. But how would we even define that? And so we would define our terms because some of our audience out there may not understand what we mean when we say the word premillennialism. What are we talking about?
I guess if you were to break the word down, pre meaning before, millennial, thousand, ism, always dealing with doctrine or teaching. So there's a teaching out there that before the 1,000-year reign of Christ, before he comes back, he's going to set up an earthly kingdom on earth and give people an opportunity to be saved. And then he's going to also usher in a new age. And so, you have this idea that there's going to be a time where the Lord's kingdom is going to be set up on earth. But does the Bible support that particular idea?
That's a great question.
From that vantage point.
That's what we hope to answer.
Right.
We're going to do our very best.
Right.
Well, spoiler alert, no.
It's a very easy answer.
Yes.
But I would say this though, it must be a serious topic. Eric went and put on the Gucci coat, man. I've never seen Eric with the Gucci on.
Oh man. Brush that shoulder off.
This is a topic too, man, that is, I didn't realize the gravity of this topic at first when I first obeyed the gospel. And then when I started to just search and I started to look up so many things and just to see the mindset that comes out of this thinking. If you're going to think that Jesus is going to come back to earth and going to reign on earth and that he's going to set up a kingdom, and then it's going to last for 1,000 years. There's going to be this 3.5-year tribulation or 3.5-year tribulation and all these things. It sounds like something that'll write a good script for Hollywood. In fact, it has been in some scripts for Hollywood. And again, it goes back to what we were saying on previous episodes, the misusing of the Bible. You can get some great ideas for Hollywood cinema out of this book. And then when people go and look and say, man, that has to be right. I can get a second chance. This can happen, and that it's, of course we're gonna go all through it, and we're gonna try to do it justice today in the time that we have. But it is something that needs to be understood so that you're not deceived and to be thinking that man, I guess that you're gonna land somewhere in 1,000 years, or you just gonna all of a sudden disappear, and then everybody else is gonna be left here, and you're gonna be looking from heaven like, man, I hope my cousin makes it.
Well, but Eric mentioned about it permeating. Another thing that we should add too is that not only does it permeate different aspects of Christianity and denominationalism, but it's also variations of it.
That's where I was going to go. You actually cannot. Actually, it's very difficult to nail down a concise and precise definition because there's variations and levels and and
you got your amillennialism,
yeah,
post-millennialism, dual millennialism.
Like you have all of these various views,
preterist type
views.
Right.
I mean, all of these different sects of millennialism.
Right.
I'll call it millennialism because you have pre, post, preterist view. So you have all of these, and it's almost hard, but because of the nature in which God would use miraculous acts to confirm the Messiah and prove the Messiah, and also establish and mature the church.
Right.
Out of context, all of those things are going to be very fantastical. Lending to these very, just like eccentric views, man, of God's word, and so you get to these doctrines, these isms, and so the idea that Christ would come to earth, the Messiah would come to earth to build his kingdom, but that he was rejected by the Jews, which caught God off guard.
Right.
He was rejected by the Jews, so he established the church as a stopgap,
as plan B,
as a plan B, until he returns to set up his real kingdom.
Or as we think about it from a football term, like God had to call audible. Yeah, he had to call audible. Wow.
God saw the defense and said, well, that wasn't what we were anticipating. So he called it audible. And upon establishment of this earthly kingdom, the Messiah, which we know to be Jesus Christ, is going to reign for 1,000 years on the literal throne of David in literal Jerusalem and usher in that new age. But there's even also, as Cameron stated, there's even also national implications to this, because assumedly the Jews are going to re-inhabit all of Palestine.
Right.
And really we don't have time to get into this about, the establishment of Israel as a state in 1948 by the help of the United States and our presidents at the time having a very premillennial view of the Bible. And so thinking they were helping fulfill that which they have falsely interpreted. We don't have time for that, but it does have national implications behind it. So here's a question. Was Christ, because this is where I think you have to start, I could be wrong. What was Christ's mission? Was Christ's mission to establish an earthly kingdom? If we can identify that, I think going forward, we'll have a good path going forward. So that's the question. Now, of course, we can give a really easy answer, but was that his mission?
It's funny you said we can give an easy answer.
Okay, because we close up the episode.
We're gonna wrap it up and just say, what he came to seek and save the lost, and then a verse that comes to mind: "My kingdom is not of this world."
Right.
If it was, my people will fight for me. And so you just think about that, how the misusing of the scriptures have led to this thought that he's gonna go through and he's gonna come and set up this kingdom. And there are so many factors that speak to the opposite of that. And of course, we'll dive into some of those. And it's mind blowing that people get carried away with that. It goes to show you how you can cherry pick. You take one thing you see and can make a whole doctrine that is established, and it just blossoms. Right. And nobody even thinks to check the tree to see where it came from.
And that's why the Make It Plain cast is so word heavy. That's why we're so context heavy. That's why we believe a text out of context is a pretext that is certainly going to lead to error, because we've seen from every position that we've dealt with in every episode thus far, it all comes from an abuse or a misuse or a misunderstanding of the context of the Bible. Right. People don't study. And that's a real problem, man.
And if you start wrong, you're going to end wrong.
Man.
But by the same token that you just said, but if you take the word of God, you rightly divide it, you look at context, you compare other scriptures, you compare scripture with other scriptures, you look at history and all those things, you will find you'll be on the right path to get the right conclusion. But to answer your question, I think, you have to look at the prophecies. You have to look at, especially the book of Daniel, Daniel 2, 44, 45, because we don't have time to, to deal with it. But, one of the things that was promised as Daniel was revealing the dream and interpretation to Nebuchadnezzar was verse 44 says, God says, in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, should never be left to other people, and will break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms. It shall stand forever. So you start seeing this thing start slowly being revealed. Then you get to Daniel 7, 13 and 14.
Right.
And all those things, start by the time you get to the ministry of Christ. Luke chapter 2, by the time Jesus is born, Rome is on the throne.
Right.
And then Mark 9:1, Jesus says, there are many who are standing here, which should not taste of death till they see the kingdom of God come with power. So you start thinking, man, this thing has some type of association to what Daniel said and what was in the Old Testament, to the fulfillment of what Christ is doing by the time he comes and he promises that he's going to build the kingdom.
So if we consider Daniel to be a prophet of God, because the entire book of Daniel will be negated.
Right.
If Daniel 2:44 is an earthly kingdom. Because, as you stated, very specific prophecy, in the days of these kings, the God of heaven would set up a kingdom that would never be destroyed. In the days of those kings, the Messiah came in the days of the Roman Empire, which was prophesied to be that fifth kingdom. Right? It was the fifth kingdom. It was Babylon, and then Persia,
Medes and Persians,
the Medes and Persians, Greece and Rome. So in the days of that fifth kingdom, the God of heaven will establish kingdom. So if he was going to establish an earthly kingdom, it had to happen during the Roman rule. It would have to, if it was going to be an earthly kingdom, it would have had to happen during that time. Like, it's not, I'm going to set up my kingdom and leave the church and reset it up, because Daniel said the God of heaven will do it. Can he do it or can he? Because if he can't, then he's not God. But if he can and didn't say he was, now Daniel is wrong, because Deuteronomy 18:22.
Yep.
Notice, when a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord had not spoken, but the prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. So Daniel has spoken presumptuously. Daniel saying, I'm a prophet of God. God said he's going to establish his kingdom. If God did not do that, then Daniel is a false prophet. The entire book of Daniel crumbles.
And what is interesting, you're talking about Christ. In Matthew 24, Jesus actually quote from the book of Daniel, calls Daniel a prophet, and acknowledges that he is a prophet and his book is inspired.
So we've got an issue. If he came to establish an earthly kingdom and didn't, then now we got a problem.
I think part of the problem that comes into a premillennialism is that kingdom and church, like the synonymous terms that we have. And so people misuse it, and they say, okay, is the church the kingdom?
Right.
And that leads you down a rabbit hole, because you have a lot of people who do not believe
that the church is the kingdom.
Church is the kingdom.
Well, we can talk about that, because in Matthew 16:18, Jesus promised to build his church. And then verse 19, he gave the apostles keys to the kingdom. Like, he's talking about the very same thing. Context is key. Context is always key. But there were occasions when Jesus could have went ahead and fulfilled and confirmed that mission, if his mission was to build an earthly kingdom. When you think about John chapter 6, y'all know this. Jesus told the men to sit down. He used anthropos. He told everybody to sit down. But then the very next verse in John chapter 6, verse
15,
going to 15, everybody sat down. No, before 15, everybody sat down, because he was going to feed them with 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. The Bible says, the men sat down. Near 5,000 men sat down, but Jesus said all the people need to sit down. But 5,000 men sat down. He fed them miraculously. They were going to make him a king.
Right.
Verse number 15, which is where I'm going. He perceived this. If his mission was to establish an earthly kingdom, there's your opportunity right there. They want to make you a king. The Jews want to make you a king, but Jesus perceived they were going to do this, and he departed out of their midst. He left because he said, no, exactly what you stated, Key. As he has his conversation with Pilate, with Pontius, he said, are you a king? My kingdom's not of this world. John 18:36.
The logical conclusion is, you asking me, am I king?
Right.
I have a kingdom, but it's not of this world. So what does that make me?
Yeah, it makes me the Christ.
Right.
It makes me the fulfiller of the Old Testament prophecies.
Right. I'm a king, but not the kind you talk about.
Not the kind you think about.
Right.
Like, I am a king.
Right.
I am the Christ, but my kingdom is not of this world.
And then, and I just thought about what you said about John 6. Jesus had opportunity to allow them to make him king.
Right.
But it's interesting, by the time you read Acts chapter 1, before he ascends back to heaven, they're still asking,
right?
Lord, without this time restore unto us the kingdom
of David.
Right, to Israel.
Right.
It's like, okay, he had opportunity to be a king and have an earthly kingdom, but then by the time he get ready to send back to heaven, they say, well, man, you just gonna leave us down here high and dry?
Right. Where is the kingdom?
Right.
Let my sons sit, one on your right, one on your left, when you come in your kingdom. So they understood, and even the Jews had a misunderstanding of the kingdom. They thought it was going to be a restoration of David's kingdom. Right. Hence, before Jesus resurrected in Acts chapter 1. I mean, not before he resurrected, before he ascended. So if Christ's mission was not to build and establish an earthly kingdom when he was here, so then the next logical question is this: will he do it when he comes back? Will he establish that earthly kingdom that apparently he was supposed to build his first go around, his first advent? His first go around, he was supposed to build the kingdom. But again, if you consider the tenets and positions of millennialism and the various sects of it, various thoughts of it, the rejection of Jews caught God off guard, even though he prophesied. Right.
Isaiah 53.
Isaiah 53 is a
Psalm 2.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
littered.
I mean, it just so will he establish that kingdom because he caught God off guard, the Jews' rejection? God wasn't expecting that. And so they set up the church as a stopgap. So will Christ, when he returns, establish an earthly kingdom?
Again,
Because if we solidify the fact that that wasn't his mission on earth, that still doesn't deal with the question, will he when he returns? Like, it still doesn't answer that question.
Well, and I think you can think about it from this vantage point too. I mean, does he need to set up one? Because we know he's coming back.
Right.
The Bible says he's coming back.
Right.
But does he need to set up an earthly kingdom? So for the person that's asking, you have to start thinking, okay, does he need to set up one, and for what purpose?
Right.
Well,
you'd have to deal, and I think we'll get there, but you'd have to deal with current positions that he holds now. Right. What are they? Does he hold any now?
Right.
And what would those positions be? And I think that answers the question.
Right.
He's our prophet, priest, and king.
Yep.
So, and the verse I was going to, and you said we probably deal with, I bet you probably thinking the same thing. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 24. You notice what he says. Then cometh the end when he shall deliver up the kingdom to God. So he's going to deliver up the kingdom to God.
Yeah, he's coming back for something.
He's coming back for something. He left something back. He's going to come back and say, okay, now I'm going to pick this thing up and I'm going to deliver it back to God. Then he says, when he shall have put down all rule and authority and power.
Yeah.
So if he's going to come back for his bride, as we know the scriptures teach, if this earth is going to be destroyed with fervent heat, 2 Peter 3, verses 8 through 10 discusses that. If those things are going to happen, what is he going to come back to if this earth is burnt up with fervent heat? What is he coming back for? It's going to be kind of hard to establish a kingdom without an earth.
And then even, you mentioned 1 Corinthians 15, Colossians 1:13, where it says, God had translated us into the kingdom of his dear son.
So there was something there was some entity in existence when Paul wrote that.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, when you start thinking about Paul, Paul's writings, his writings, Romans through Titus, Paul spoke a lot about the kingdom.
Yeah, he did.
And what's interesting, even when you get to, I think, Acts 28, it's while he was in Rome,
right?
Verse 23 and verse 31, he was speaking to them about things that were pertaining to the kingdom. So Paul thought that the church and those Christians and those who were
Stephen spoke about the kingdom,
right?
And so the answer is no. The answer is no. Jesus will not establish an earthly kingdom. I want to build this very simple. Argument and defense against that view. In Zechariah 6,
right,
12 and 13, I want you guys to notice. Get your Bibles out there with us if you're studying with us. And speak unto him, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold, the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. The council of peace will be between him and his throne and his priesthood. Mm-hmm. This is the Messiah. This is the messianic prophecy. The Messiah has to hold two positions simultaneously. Right. The Messiah has to be both priest and king at the same time. He cannot be one without the other. Jesus Christ is a priest currently. Hebrews chapter 7, verse 15. Right. We understand that he is a priest, right? The priesthood was spoken nothing. Moses spoke nothing concerning the priesthood out of Levi, but Jesus Christ had to pass through the heavens, Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14, in order to become our high priest, verse 15.
And then even, what Brother Gordon is saying is, Zechariah 6, 12 and 13 about both offices,
right?
The king and priest. That's why you see Genesis, going back to Genesis 14 with Melchizedek. Right. He was both a king and a priest at the same time.
Right.
So by the time you read the book of Hebrews chapter 5, verse 5 and 10, he's called a priest after the order of Melchizedek. What does that mean? He's both a king and a priest at the same time.
Because in 14, chapter 7, right, it was evident that Moses spoke nothing concerning the priesthood out of tribe of Judah.
Right.
Right. The priesthood came from the Levitical priesthood, right, the Levitical line, the Levi, the tribe of Levi. And so Jesus couldn't be a priest on earth. Mm-hmm. He had to, Hebrews 4:14, pass through the heavens, which now the Hebrews writer speaks in present tense. Hebrews 4:15, for we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all, but was. So he's a priest right now.
Absolutely.
Because he was, afflicted with all points, like as we are, yet without sin. Mm-hmm. But in order for him to be a priest now, according to fulfillment of Zechariah 6, he has to be a king at the same time. And when you consider consider just the basic definition of kingdom, domain of a king. If he's a priest right now and he has to be a king right now, then he also has to have a kingdom right now.
Hey, you know what's interesting?
Mm-hmm.
In Acts 17,
when
Paul and Silas went to Thessalonica, and it's like, man, these have come here, will turn the world upside down,
right,
saying that there is another king, one Jesus,
right,
as opposed to Caesar.
Opposed to Caesar, because they know that would rile up.
Absolutely,
they knew that would get them.
Yep.
Because Rome didn't care about your little. Y'all little religious stuff,
right?
We don't.
But you say somebody rival.
You talking about a rival to Caesar. Now you've got the attention of the state.
That's right. And fine words,
right? And which was so crazy because Paul did preach that. Mm-hmm. He didn't, he didn't preach it in like opposition to Caesar's throne, right, but there was a king, and that king is Jesus. Ephesians 1:10 through 22, 1 Timothy 6:15, right, Revelation 19:13 and 16. Like, he's going to show who is the king, the only potentate. Only potentate. The one with power, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords.
The real GOAT. The real GOAT.
The greatest of all time. In Hebrews 8:1, in Hebrews 8:1, mm-hmm, I believe the Hebrews writer is actually making a reference to Zechariah chapter 6. Now these things which we have spoken, this is the sum. Right. We have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. I don't know that he's quoting Zechariah, but man, I tell you what, that passage right there.
It sure sounds like
It sure sounds like it.
But you know what?
It fulfills Zechariah chapter 6.
And not only that, Hebrews 1, verse 1.
Yeah.
Verse 1 and 3. You notice in these 3 verses, you got those offices. God, who at sundry times and in divers manners spake in time past to the fathers by the prophets.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a prophet.
Right.
Verse 1. Hath in these last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the world, who being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and uphold all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sin, priesthood, and then he says, sat down on the right hand of the Majesty on high.
Kingship. Yeah. He's prophet, priest, and king.
Yep.
There were several men in the Old Testament that held 2 positions, but not all 3.
Yep.
You know, Samuel was a priest and prophet.
Yep.
David was a prophet and a king. Jesus was a prophet, priest, and king.
Yep.
And Hebrews 8:1 seems to me to be a reference. I don't know this to be the case, but it seems to me to be a reference of the fulfillment of Zechariah chapter 6, verses 12 and 13. I'm going back to what y'all were stating earlier. Man, if this is not the case, there's got to be some old folk walking around here today.
It's got to be some old
Mark
people.
9:1.
Man.
Because some of them weren't going to taste death until they saw the kingdom come.
Well, even Key mentioned earlier about the whole thing about Jesus not even, touching down on earth. We was talking about, he was like,
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Because that brings something to mind. So here's a question I ask. What if he did? What would the implication be to us? I'm asking. I'm genuinely, churning this in my mind. Would it, if his foot stepped back on, because in heaven, he's still we kind of getting off in another topic. That's okay. In heaven, he is still the Son of God.
Absolutely.
He kept his humanity. He did. He said, look, it's me.
Because even after he ascends, you still see passage where it refers to him as the Son of God. Hebrews 4.
So right. So here's my question: If his foot touched this earth again, does that nullify his priesthood? That's my question. Think about it.
Yes.
If he came back to earth, Hebrews 7:14.
Yes.
Would it nullify his priesthood? And if that is the case, and I don't know that to be the case. Yes. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not espousing any doctrines here. But man, would our sins come flooding back on us? If it nullifies his priesthood? Because the Bible says he had to pass through the heavens to offer that sacrifice. You mean tell me he's going to come back down here?
Well, but like you said, the book of Hebrews kind of, take these. Well, the book of Hebrews doesn't take position. It states as facts and truth.
Right.
You have to go and ascertain it. But Hebrews 9, 27 and 28.
Yeah.
When he appears the second time without sin. You know what I'm saying? He's not making no sacrifices and he's not doing anything pertinent pertaining to sin. And
he's not performing priestly duties.
Right.
When he come back.
Yeah, when he come back, he's coming back as the bill is come due. Yeah. And he's coming to
Second Peter 3:10.
Right. So he's coming back to settle up.
Well, I tell you what, man, this has been a excellent study. I appreciate you fellas, man. If you'd like to reach out to us, submit questions or comments, we'd love to address those on the show. Maybe even use them as content to drive the show. Make it plain, HAB22 @gmail.com. May God bless you and keep you as you seek to conform your will to his.